agreed to come and speak with us this morning. My name is David Tucker. I'm the chairperson of the Human Relations Commission. To my left, I have Commissioner Vinnick. To my far right, Commissioner Burton, Commissioner Tran, and Commissioner Dash. Again, we thank you for coming to share with us from your perspectives regarding this issue. There is an agenda that we have set up here. As we all are aware, even prior to the onset of COVID, that there was a housing crisis in Nashville, and that was further exacerbated by COVID and the ending of the moratorium that have wreaked havoc on many of the families in our area. So the commission, through our public information hearing, which is in keeping with our mission to protect and promote the personal dignity, peace, safety, security, health, and general welfare of all people in Nashville and Davidson County. It's to that end that we're holding this hearing to gather information from you and to ask you some questions. We will be compiling a report based on your contributions and to try to assist many of you, which are advocates, in any way possible that we can on behalf of the affected folk. Again, in value of your time, we want to move straight on into our questioning. Judge Bell was to be first, and she's running behind. So Metro Action Commission and Dr. Cynthia Kroom, you'll have 7 minutes, and then after that, some of the commissioners will ask you questions. And again, we're grateful for you taking time out of your day to come and be a part of this. Okay, thank you. That's interesting. I was just told this by Melanie. I'll just say it out loud to get it on the record. We invited someone from the mayor's office also, and I do remember that. And unfortunately, we do not have anyone here from the mayor's office. So we're going to begin with Dr. Kroom of Metro Action Commission, and we are in your hands at this point.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners, so much for this opportunity to share some information. I'm going to just answer the questions that I was sent, and thank you so much for the questions. First question was, what do we do and what's our role as it relates to evictions? Overall, I'll just say that the Metropolitan Action Commission is the city's community action agency, so our mission Thank you. Administering the city's rental assistance funding that is through the Treasury Department. And as a part of that administering of those funds, we believe that the total amount of dollars that will ultimately be available in Nashville is $60 million. That $60 million consists of funding directly from Treasury to our organization of about 30 million or so, and then the balance that we expect we will have access to will be through the Tennessee Housing Development Agency. So I want to make sure that I mention that. A part of our role is to also assist tenants in finding housing. In some cases, we have tenants who have applied for assistance, and the landlord has either refused to accept assistance through us, or the tenant is in a property where it's being sold. And so we're having to assist tenants. In that case, they would be assisted with a deposit, which is something our organization does prior to the ERA funding, and initially 1 month's rent. Currently, we will pay 12 months in arrears for tenants who need help, and we will pay 3 months forward. So 12 months, up to 12 months in arrears, and then 3 months forward. In addition to that, we work with the housing court through Judge Bell. We have a specific arrangement with MDHA where we assist their residents so that we can minimize them being displaced through evictions as well. We are advocating to the state of Tennessee because there's less flexibility in the funds that they are providing to us than the funds provided directly to us through Treasury. In addition to that, working with tenants who, even though the landlords have accepted our funding, are still doing things like sending them notices for eviction, knowing that they have signed a 90-day agreement that they cannot evict a tenant from 90 days from the last month we paid. And so we're finding that there are still landlords who are sending notices to tenants, and that some tenants are fearfully responding to those notices without realizing or remembering that the landlord has signed a 90-day agreement. One of the questions that is asked is, from my perspective, what are we seeing? And I so appreciated the report from the Red Door Collective, because if you look at that report, what we're seeing is consistent. It's the same large apartment complexes that the report indicates does evictions, are the same apartment complexes that we are working with largely in terms of payouts so that tenants are not evicted. Same thing with the attorneys that's listed in the report. These are the attorneys that we are largely working with to try and avoid evictions for tenants. So again, I really appreciate this report. I think what we also want to make clear that we are conscious of the fact that the rental assistance is a short-term approach to a long-term issue. This is, again, I'll mention that we pay 3 months forward. So we already know that around October, around November, around December, that those individuals who have had that 3-month forward payment, that we're going to have to be mindful of whether or not that their eviction is actually ending up being delayed for non-payment, whether or not they are able to continue to pay beyond the point that we have paid their initially. So that's something that's on our radar and that we want to make sure we mention, because we know that the housing advocates, the grassroots groups, are also paying attention to this concern that we anticipate is going to be a potential problem as we go forward. The other question I got was, what more support do you need? I think the support of the grassroots organizations has been extremely helpful already. They're there in the courts. We do have a courts team that's present in the courts, but they are also there. They're a good watchful eye that we find the information that they provide to be very helpful. I think also it's helpful. We have gone to the city and requested that dollars be specifically appropriated to the nonprofits for individuals who are between 81 to 100% of poverty. We know that the 120% of poverty number is also important. Our approach to them was, we don't know what the demand will be for 81 to 100%. But our recommendation to them was that was at least a starting point because Metro Action Commission does not serve individuals who are outside of that 80% range. The other thing that we've done is we've asked the city to look at their funds to see about ways to help individuals who are undocumented, that as we understand it cannot be assisted, and I'm talking about from the court side of it, by legal aid. I don't know legal aid's rules. They'll have to respond to that themselves. But we have asked the city to please consider some of their funding going to groups who can help individuals who are non-documented. Now, we are able to assist individuals who are non-documented with their HOPE applications. They are eligible. There is no requirement for Social Security numbers. None of that is required. But that's been, those have been our two main requests to the city, that they look at using their funds to address those particular issues, in large part because of the amount of money that we believe that we will have access to, both from Treasury directly and from the state of Tennessee, for those individuals who are below the 80% and below poverty. I think those are basically my comments, except thank you all for this opportunity to speak with you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Kroom. I'll now turn it to any of the, Commissioner Dash.
Yes, Dr. Kroom, thank you so much. I think anecdotally we hear that this eviction crisis in Nashville is affecting more Black and brown communities, and just wanting to just know, is there, and this is of course to all the future panelists as well to speak to this if possible, but just wondering if there's any statistics or if you would kind of feel the same way based on the clients that you're serving, if that's true.
I would say it is true based on the clients that we're serving, and I'll also add to that we're also seeing that the majority of the clients that we're serving hit that below 50% AMI threshold as well. That is a Treasury priority, but it really hasn't been difficult to prioritize them because that's the majority of the people that we're seeing applying for funds.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Vennick.
Dr. Crooms, thank you so much for being here today. I guess my question is, what is it that you need in terms of your agency in order to reach out effectively to those who are being impacted by eviction? What is it that is impeding your ability to disperse the funds that are available to you?
Well, at this point, we don't feel like our ability has been impeded. We have spent the first pot of money, which was approximately $20 million. We're already $1.2 million as of last week into the second part of money, which is money that which was the $9 million that we got directly from Treasury. I think the bigger piece for us is making sure that what would be helpful as we're working with the grassroots organizations, as we're doing outreach to folks to try and help make sure that we have the information we need from them. But also, I think some of the work that we're seeing that's been extremely helpful is once we're able to get people assisted, that they are not then frightened by landlords who are trying to make them believe that they can still be evicted at this point after they've already signed these agreements. So some of the grassroots work that some of the organizations are doing, we found extremely helpful. We have, you all probably don't know this, but with MDHA in particular, because again, which is why I appreciated this report so much, we purchased a number of licenses just for MDHA and are working with them directly around processing of their applications so that we can minimize the eviction of folks from MDHA properties. That's one of the highest groups that both this report has noted and that we've seen as well. So I think just continuing to provide the kind of information that you're providing. We have a ton of outreach events that are coming up. A number of the grassroots organizations have been with us at some of those outreach events in terms of working with our customers and getting them through the process. I think for us, those are the things that we will continue to need. We have done an RFP for a number of nonprofits, so we know that they will be coming online as well, assisting us. We are expanding the team that is working with the courts. So I think those are the things that are of most importance. I think the final thing is to make sure that any information that's being put out to the public is accurate information, both about the process, but also about the amount of money that's being expended in the community.
Just a brief follow-up, if I can.
Okay, go ahead.
First, could you provide us with a copy of the application that people are submitting for assistance? And I'd be interested in also seeing the agreement that is entered into with landlords. Which are the grassroots organizations that you're working with?
The ones that we have found to be extremely helpful, PATH has been great. And then the other one, of course, is going to slip my mind because they've been involved with actually doing this report. But those are the ones that come to my mind that have, fussed at us, but have also been really, really good at being in the courts and doing some good work around helping make sure that tenants understand what they need to do in order for us to help them, but who are also sort of making sure that we know that when things are happening in the courts that we may not be aware of are taking place.
Great. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Commissioner Dash.
Tran.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Thank you, Dr.
Commissioner
Tran, for coming to be with us today. I'm bad at math, and there are many millions of dollars that are being thrown around, and there seems to be lots of money, and I'm very unclear in terms of where we're at because of the different pots of money. Can you tell me, since the pandemic has started, what allotments, either be federal or state funds, have been allotted to MAC to distribute? and how much of that money has been distributed by MAC?
Okay, so, so far, the first allotment to Metro Action Commission that was effective in March 15th was $20 million. That allotment was spent last week. The second allotment is $9 million. That allotment was specifically because the regulations for it are less stringent. We were doing an RFP with the nonprofits for that funding. We are still in the RFP process for that $9 million. THDA, we approached them about a pot of money that we believed belonged to Davidson County. That's $22 million. We asked, that got approved by Metro Council on last night. So now we will have access to those dollars to be able to expend. THDA's requirements, however, are a little more stringent than Metro Action Commission's. And they have agreed to take a look at their requirements to see if they will relax some of the requirements that they have that's a little different from ours. And I'll just give you the most obvious one. We are allowed to pay the tenant directly. That's the rule that we've set for our funding that we just finished expending. THDA at this point is not allowing us to pay the tenant directly. We have to work with the landlord. Now, to their credit, we have met with them and they are working on trying to adjust that. We believe that there is another pot of money that's about $16 million that THDA will also receive that we believe belongs to Davidson County. So that's what I mean when I say the $60 million. It's also based on the fact that we believe that THDA was allotted dollars for our county that we didn't actually receive through Treasury. So all told, we believe that if we're able to secure that additional $16 million, that will be available for our county. Now, the upside to the $9 million that I mentioned and the $16 million that we could possibly get from THDA is that that money does not have to be spent until September of 2023, which gives us, not that I think we won't spend it quickly, I believe that it will be gone very quickly, but it does allow us to then have the time we need to get the money out. The money that we just got approved by council last night to THDA, we'll begin spending that immediately. Because we have applications in the system that we have to process, and now we have a funding source that we can use to actually cover those applications.
Thank you, Dr. Kroom. We were trying to keep our questions to a minimum. I know this is a very serious issue. I'm going to go ahead, Commissioner Burton, go ahead and ask your question. But we were trying to keep it to 5 minutes in between each presenter, but we know this is a serious issue.
Dr. Kroom, if you know, how long does it take from the time a person puts in an application to the time that they receive or the landlord receives payment?
It depends on when they put it in. So quite frankly, if they put it in early, so I'll just go back to an application that was put in March. Until we were at a place where we could get some relief from Treasury, and we feel like we have full relief from Treasury, those applications were taking quite a while.
Quite a while.
Meaning it could be 6-8 weeks at that point from, let's say, a March application. Some of it would be dependent on how much of the information we needed was actually there. Now the process goes much quicker, but we also have things that we prioritize. So for example, we actually get the dockets. The dockets come to us the Thursday before people are scheduled to go into court. We check the docket to see, do they have a HOPE application? That person's application is likely going to move faster than someone else's because we know that they have a court situation. So there's a team that's just working on courts. So it can be 2 weeks, it can be 3 weeks, dependent on the specific circumstances and depending on the documentation that we're missing. Again, with Treasury changing its guidance, we're able to we have a whole different approach that we have in terms of qualifying people than we had very early on in the process.
Thank you, Dr. Kroom. Is there you had stated that the grassroots organizations have been extremely helpful to you. Is there any process to provide grants to these nonprofits to assist them in the assistance that they're doing?
Yeah, we just went through that process with the RFP, and unfortunately, I am not able to discuss how many of them applied, who they were, what their funding is going to be, because we're under Metro rules. But that was the process that we were using in order for us to provide funding to the groups who applied for those dollars. Our hope as we go forward is that we'll be able to look at that as we get additional actual funding in the door to be able to offer that opportunity again. But we are waiting to announce who those nonprofits or groups are going to be that apply for funding and who will be funded.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Kroom.
Thank you all so much.
Right. And we're going to go back up, excuse me. We're going to go back up and ask that Judge Bell. Good morning, Judge. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and contribute to this process.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for working my docket schedule today. We've got dockets at 10, 11, 1:30, and 2 today, so it's going to be a long day, but bear with me, and meetings. But my name is Rachel Bell. I'm one of your General Sessions Court judges. Have been serving here in Nashville, Tennessee for 9 years. I'm very happy to be a part of this process here in Nashville, focusing on the eviction crisis that we see ourselves with, and also nationwide. My role, I'm the presiding judge for the Legacy Housing Resource Diversionary Court. This court was put in place and starting to be developed back in 2019. The initial approach was to work with MDHA, and we asked MDHA if they would no longer file evictions. That's why I liked seeing that report yesterday, because you'll see MDHA has not filed any more evictions since 2020. We put those measures in place as a pilot project. We were going to go apartment complex by apartment complex, but right before the pandemic, we decided we were just going to take on all of MDHA properties. MDHA's worked with us for more than a year to get that established, along with Legal Aid Society, and I see Carrie Dietz, who is here, and Arkenya Waller, who is here. We had a great team of people that were working to get that established. After the pandemic hit, the moratoriums were extended, then expired, then extended, then expired. We were approached by the senior advisor for the mayor's office to see if we could take this approach that we had created and expand it to the city of Nashville. We said yes, and we started moving. The word is pivot, to prepare to get ready to take on the Housing Resource Diversionary Court, not just working with government assisted housing or Section 8, but for the city of Nashville. I then talked with Metro Action Commission, which is a phenomenal relationship that we have, because they were receiving the U.S. Treasury ERAP funds and also had CARES grant funding. We worked with the United Way and the CARES grant funding, and there are a number of nonprofits that were giving rental assistance to tenants and assisting landlords. And then the Tennessee Supreme Court entered an ADR plan in December of 2020, which really helped us launch the court initially. And our partner there with Rule 31 mediators with Nashville Conflict Resolution Center, and I see Sarah Fiegel here as well. So when we first started, we started out virtually in Richard Rooker's office, and I see Joseph Day here from Richard Rooker's office, the clerk. I asked him to pull all the pending eviction cases. We pulled them. There were 1,800. We transferred all of them by court order to the Housing Resource Diversionary Court and ordered them to seek mediation, or to let the court know if they didn't want mediation, to allow us to still try to see if we could work this case out and get it resolved. That's how we first started out. Then the courts opened back up in March 15th, and then we moved to in-person court. That is when the housing court navigators, that we call them now, which are court liaisons with Metro Action Commission, and the individuals working with the Legacy Housing Resource Diversionary Court, was staffing our eviction courts, which are 1A and 1B. Staffing them, manning them, looking at the dockets, ensuring to see if they had an application, if they were working with the United Way and CARES grant funding, if they were working with NCRC, which is Nashville Conflict Resolution Center, so we could get them transferred from eviction court to the Housing Resource Diversionary Court, in which we have a robust court team that works with me and my team, my staff, as well as Metro Action Commission with Dr. Kroom and her staff, which has been great. The Housing Resource Diversionary Court steps in to give the case management and hand-holding with an applicant to go through the process with court protection. And so last week, we entered in another court order by the judges, and I'm always petitioning to streamline the process, make it easier on the team to assist the landlord and the tenant understanding how they get access to these funds. We did enter an order with my colleagues. Every case that has a Metro Action application, HOPE application, will automatically be transferred to the Housing Resource Diversionary Court. That order is probably going to be signed later today. It indicates inside of it the reason why this needs to happen, the guidance we've received from the White House to create eviction diversion programs, and the need potentially to try to seal those records. I've also entered an order to take care of what Dr. Kroon said a little earlier ago, and we started entering these, and I indicated we would enter these starting September 7th. And in this order, it's an order that I draft every day for each case, letting them know exactly how much was paid, their rent was paid good through, when their obligation as a tenant starts, if they have a lease agreement, don't have a lease agreement, if they have a month-to-month agreement, and I put in here the 90-day protection period, when it starts and when it ends, and that the landlord cannot evict you during this period of time. This is to take care of the issue with landlords that I've heard taking the money and still pressuring the tenant, thinking they have to vacate, and then tenants are vacating because they're scared, not realizing that they have this 90-day protection to try to either find another unit or still come back before the court if there's something that's going awry and not being focused. So with the court power that we have and the things that we can do, we have two orders. One is to automatically transfer MAC applications automatically to the Housing Resource Diversionary Court that started this week. The other order is the protection for the landlord and the tenant to understand exactly what they've agreed to with the payment agreement and the DocuSign agreement that they've entered into with Metro Action Commission. With that being said, I don't have anything else to share. I do know that there was a question that said, what do we need from the court? But I would love to have our attorneys to be client advocates, not just focusing particularly just on the tenant. It is focused on the tenant, but making sure the landlord feels comfortable that they're having somebody to help them streamline the process and get their application pushed through and help them understand what's going on. I do understand that a lawyer can't represent both. However, having client advocates and individuals there to help me further the goal of helping tenants understand the process and not being confused about their rights, their legal rights during this process. So we're working with Vanderbilt Housing Law Clinic to get more students to have a conditional license to come before the courts. We've got a conversation starting with Belmont Law School, National School of Law as well, and I do believe that we'll have a pro bono program also that will be more pushed to put and be established to allow other attorneys that want to volunteer to assist. If we have more attorney presence for the tenants when they go to eviction court 1A and 1B, and a lawyer advocating for them, getting them over to the Housing Resource Diversionary Court, walking with them along the way while they're in the Housing Resource Diversionary Court, helping them understand the orders that they've received and the obligations that they're required. And then also I'm working to seal the records. So in my order, it says the clerk must seal the record. Now, if the clerk can't do it, then it's in my order, they can't do it, but we're working through it. So I got 1 second left. There we go. All right. You're welcome.
Thank you, Judge Bell. Are there any questions from the commissioners?
Thank you, Judge Bell. I just wanted to ask we know that Nashville is very diverse. There's a lot of immigrant community members, and just wanting to kind of understand how the court navigates a lot of language barriers that may enter the court, and just what is the process, just because housing stuff can be really complicated, and just kind of wanting to get some context on that.
Well, I think that's a great question. The good thing about General Sessions Court, we are fully ADA compliant. We have an interpreter committee with a director with our General Sessions Court. So at any time somebody needs an interpreter, we automatically go through the Tennessee Administrative Office of the Courts and get the particular interpreter that's needed. We have the language line, so there's no barrier for any individual that's coming before our courts. Once we're identified that they need an interpreter, they get an interpreter immediately. If we can't get them one that day, we reset it for the date in which we will have the interpreter to be present.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Judge Bell,
Yes.
thank you very much for being here today, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your experience has been from the landlord side of the transfers to the diversionary court?
At first, there was a little bit of reluctance. Wanting to make sure when I'm going to get my money. I want my property back. A lot of landlords are wanting to sell their property. A lot of landlords are wanting to up their rent. We've seen that a lot. I am a Rule 31 licensed mediator. I can't practice now because I'm a judge, but with that skill set, you kind of know how to kind of get individuals to understand, yes, we understand that you want your property back. Yes, we understand that you want to see how soon you're going to get your money. But with the court being involved and already have the jurisdiction over it, I've been able to kind of help them understand that, yes, we understand what you want. However, this tenant is going to be homeless. And if you would give us the process to work towards finding them somewhere else to live while you're still trying to get your property back and or the funds, that would be more amenable to the court. And I can still dismiss the case, still not have this on the tenant's record as an eviction because they were dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. The landlord really just wants to sell the property. It's not any other issue than non-payment of rent. Now, if it's some other issue, criminal activity, not meeting all the other obligations of the lease agreement, then that's something different. But if it's just non-payment of rent, work with us, get your money, because I've told them plenty of times, you can get your judgment of $20,000, but it's going to take you 100 years to get the $20 here, $20 there, $30 there, and you trying to garnish your check. Just get the money that's been made available so this tenant doesn't have an arrearage, a debt. You are able to receive your funds. You get your property back if we need to do that. So I've continued I've continued cases several times to ensure that when we have to have a tenant vacate, that we've also made sure, I've ensured that the tenant actually has somewhere to reside before we've gotten to an impasse. I also have been able to use Nashville Conflict Resolution Center to help mediate cases like that, so that if we come to that resolve, that we still are able to make sure that there's not a homelessness issue resolved with that particular case.
How successful have you been, Judge, at helping individuals find somewhere else to move to?
It has been extremely times 100% challenging. There are times where we're trying to find somewhere for individuals to live, and there's no affordable housing in Nashville. The wait list is December just for a single-family home. There are some that are available for 3 bedrooms, but there are individuals that may just need a 2-bedroom. They can't afford the rent for a 3-bedroom. The property values, I know in Nashville, have gone up, so the rent now is going up. It's challenging. There are people that I've had to continue it at least upwards of almost 3 to 4 continuances, almost 2 or 3 months trying to find one individual a place to live.
Thank you.
It's tough.
Thank you. Any other questions? Judge Bell, thank you so much for what you're doing through the Legacy Court and also for taking time to come and share with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
This time from PATH, we have Jackie Sims.
Okay. Thank you. Got a little glare here. All right. Good morning. Thank you very much for having me today. I want to say up front, I don't want or mean to step on anyone's toes today, but I may.
Ms. Sims, could you pull your mic just a little bit toward, because they're also
Move that.
recording. Thank you.
Okay, what I was saying is I don't mean or desire to step on any toes today, but I may, in the interest of the persons that I serve day in and day out, literally 7 days a week. So I apologize if I should do that during the course of my presentation. The first thing I want to say is eviction is more than just a forced move. It impacts physical and mental health, access to schools and transportation, people's ability to keep their jobs, and so much more. Sometime when I come home at the end of the day, I really feel that my mental health also, as well as physical health, has been greatly impacted. Eviction is both a cause and a condition of poverty. Here in Nashville, I'm watching it become a well-oiled mechanism for displacement, and it is very disheartening. I'm here because I serve the people in this community who struggle around each of these issues: housing, transit, and equitable employment. And for too many of them, they are living in a state of high anxiety, desperation, entering into depression. And after 10 years as a mental health professional, I feel I can rightfully say that. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what we're seeing every day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Until recently, we have literally been at court with our volunteer staff. We get the detainer warrants about 3 days before people are scheduled to go to court, and we knock on their doors on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, morning, afternoon. So we have 2 different teams that go out on the weekend. And the reason why we do this is Mel Fowler Green, who's sitting before me, reached out to Pat several months back to share her concern for people with detainer warrants who are not showing up for court, and things were not going well for them. So we were knocking on those doors to get people to come to court, and it made a difference in the number of people that were actually showing up. So when we saw what was happening in the courts, because not only did we get people to court, but Monday through Friday, we would actually work as, or function as advocates, housing advocates, so that people would know they had a support system, so we could point to, you need to see that person, you need to talk to that person, this person can help you, with thus and such, to remind them that there were legal aid persons in the courtroom, there are conflict management persons in the courtroom, lots of things that they could take advantage of. And this is when we got an opportunity to get to know Judge Bell's legacy court staff. I cannot tell you how amazing they have been to work with, and for 2 reasons. One, it is evident that they care about the population that they're serving, but most important, they are competent. They know what they're doing. There's nothing more frustrating than working with people that are a little more lax. We'll just leave it at that. So this has been a very beneficial relationship for us because we get a lot of our referrals from Legacy Court for persons who need more wraparound services, and we do a lot of that. One of the things that we do is we hold meetings in community. Bassberry and Sims has agreed to do pro bono work with our housing clients to answer questions that we can't answer. We're not lawyers, and to kind of give them some guidance as to what direction they may want to go. So Melissa and I get a chance now weekly, Friday mornings, to talk to the attorneys at Bassberry Sims to help give us guidance. So we're not doing the wrong thing, stepping on wrong toes, or even inadvertently giving out wrong information. So that's been a really valuable resource for us, and we hope to grow that process because our clients really appreciate the opportunity to meet somewhere, to be able to sit down and talk to an attorney about the predicaments that they're in. One of my concerns is now I see Metro Action has persons that are actually staffed up outside of the courtroom, but for a while they had wonderful flyers, which is good. But at the height of this, we desperately needed more warm bodies, as many warm bodies as we could get outside of that courtroom. I have people that have applied as early as March, and I had to stand beside an elderly woman, less elderly than I, and watch her get evicted. I watched Judge Bell go to battle with the landlord's attorney to try to save the housing of this woman who is also housing her 4-year-old granddaughter. We were unsuccessful. And this was a HOPE application that had been started back in March. I don't know all the reasons why, things don't get processed. But I do talk to landlords every single day. As early as this morning at 8:15, trying to get them to be more patient, hold off, your money will come. You know, it's a cumbersome process, working with city government, so it's difficult. So I'm just terribly concerned moving forward. What are things going to look like with the number of people that I see still that are going to be evicted? I'm working with a family now that's in a hotel, and it's rough, guys. And I don't think the city, the average person in the city, is aware of just how difficult it is out there right now with evictions.
Thank you, Ms. Sims. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Tran.
Thank you for coming today to speak to us about the urgency. Thank you for coming to speak with us today. I feel your sense of urgency, and the process and the time lag is becoming very apparent with your words and your testimony and the previous two speakers. I just wanted to ask you, because there does seem to be a time lag with the distribution of funds. And in your view, what are the bottlenecks of this process? From the warrant, the issuing the warrant, all the way through Judge Bell's court, for example. What do you see as the bottlenecks? I know that we've talked about needing more manpower, more warm bodies, but
Yeah.
Is there technology issues? Are there interface issues? Are there strict guidelines that are holding up the process that can make this more efficient in the distribution of funds?
I personally don't know much about the technology process, but my administrative assistant does. She fully understands the technology processes being used to push these applications through. And in her opinion, it's a flawed process. It's one that she used to use when she worked in hotels for processing who needs towels, who needs sheets, who needs extra blankets. And she said it wasn't meant to do what it's attempting to do now. I don't know where the bottlenecks are. I just know that I hear from landlords 4 or 5 times a week, or I hear from the persons that we're working with because the landlords are breathing down their necks. I know some of the landlords are not really good at getting the necessary paperwork to Metro Actions. I find myself in the middle. I actually went to an event. Actually, Path went ahead of an event for Metro Action to make sure people came out to the tent. We knocked on doors, and we got them out in sizable numbers on a very hot Saturday morning. But there was a problem that morning with the entering into the data, and that was very problematic because it was hot. You know, it was early in the morning, and we encouraged people to get out there so we could help save their housing. In that particular complex, the landlord is also problematic, which helps to also hold up the process. But I mentioned earlier how important it was to work with people who really know their jobs. It's frustrating when people aren't adequately trained, or the mechanisms being used aren't really the best piece, the best thing that you should be utilizing. So, you know, that's all I can say about that. This is frustrating. Trying to, you tell people, come to court, you know, this is the best way to help us keep your housing. Then there are programs down there that are going to help you, you know, help secure your housing. And they end up getting evicted anyway, some of them. And it's hard to look a person in the face after you've gone through all that, and they end up evicted anyway.
Commissioner Bennett.
Thank you for joining us today, Ms. Sims. Could you, if you had 3 things that could be done today to avert further damage and evictions, what would those things be?
One thing I would tell the city that you could have and should have played a greater role in getting the word out to general population that there was an entity, which was Metro Action, that would be handling, helping, defer, stop, hopefully, evictions. That was never adequately done. That should have been on television, it should have been on radio, it should have been on paper. That was very poorly advertised, in my opinion, and I think that was the city's responsibility. I also don't think that Metro Action, I question whether they have adequate infrastructure, because I wouldn't be hearing from landlords after months of applications being processed, hey, we still don't have our money. So I don't know where the bottleneck is, but there's a bottleneck somewhere, because the money is not flowing as quickly as I believe it should be. It shouldn't be taking 3 months for an application to be processed, and some of them are taking that long, at least from the time that people have started, and then where I enter into the process when they're questioning me about when am I going to get my money.
All right. Thank you, Jackie, for coming and appearing before us this morning. And I'm grateful for your organization that acts as a bridge between these others. And I am just refreshing to hear that there are folks who are maintaining individuals' personal dignity through this, which so happens as people get closer to the poverty line, they lose their humanity. So that is refreshing to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
I did just want to add, sorry to backtrack you, but I'm Mel Fowler-Green, the director, and I did just want to disclose that the Metro Human Relations Commission has provided financial assistance to PATH in an initiative that a joint initiative called the Eviction Outreach Project and Court Watch. And we're likely to continue some of that funding through this fiscal year. And we also have embedded a paid intern with PATH, paid through our office, to liaise and to assist with that process. But I just wanted to publicly disclose that the support that we're providing.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the Legal Aid Society, Darkenya Waller.
Good morning, and thank you for hearing from us. My name is Darkenya Waller, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Legal Aid Society of Middle Tennessee and the Cumberlands, Tennessee's largest nonprofit law firm. With 8 offices across Middle Tennessee, we offer free civil legal services to low-income and vulnerable people. The size and breadth of our organization allows us to leverage expertise, resources, and experience from across our 48-county service area to bring quality legal representation to a growing poverty population. Unfortunately, there is no legal right to an attorney if you're being evicted from your home or for any other civil legal issue. This is where the Legal Aid Society comes in. Through private donations and grants, Legal Aid Society helps to make the legal system more fair and less daunting for those who are unable to afford an attorney. Our 45 staff attorneys and our network of more than 400 pro bono attorneys, including Bass, Berry, and Sims, who we work very closely with, handle a variety of civil legal issues, including bankruptcy, consumer protection, family law, health and public benefits law, tax disputes, and housing issues, like those impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and the eviction moratorium. In Davidson County, the Legal Aid Society is working closely with Judge Rachel Bell and the Housing Resource Diversionary Court to offer free legal services to unrepresented tenants in court. Legal Aid acknowledges the significant load landlords have had to carry throughout the pandemic in lost rents and opportunity. It is our goal to help landlords receive payment for the financial losses while ensuring that tenants gain and maintain housing. We do this by making staff attorneys available to assist tenants referred to us by the Housing Resource Diversionary Court and to produce materials to advise landlords and tenants about their rights. According to the Red Door Collective report, in July of 2021, landlords filed 637 detainer warrants with more than 526 eviction rulings. 76% of those cases were by default. At that time, tenants owed more than $1.7 million in fees. We are seeing that many tenants are not appearing in court because they actually have COVID. The virus is impacting their ability to work, to pay bills, or to participate in the legal process. An attorney can assist with this by appearing on their behalf. As you can imagine, tenants who cannot afford to pay rent cannot afford to pay an attorney. Studies have shown that 98% of tenants in eviction cases are unrepresented, 98%. More often than not, Legal Aid Society is the only representation available to tenants in the Housing Resource Diversionary Court. We have heard that many landlords try to avoid and circumvent the Housing Resource Diversionary Court in order to gain possession of the property as quickly as possible. They are willing to forego any financial recovery if they can just get possession. In this scenario, the landlord loses money he may be entitled to, and the tenant ends up with an eviction on their record. In our experience, reluctant landlords and their attorneys are more willing to send cases to the diversionary court when Legal Aid Society is on the other side of the case. This is perhaps one of the biggest benefits of having an attorney involved. We are able to persuade landlords and their attorneys to participate in the Housing Resource Diversionary Court in good faith. We have seen a single landlord receive anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 in recovery by going through the Housing Resource Diversionary Court. We've seen this model work well in Memphis, where legal aid attorneys will work with a major landlord to settle 20 to 30 eviction cases at a time, ensuring that tenants maintain housing and landlords get paid up to 12 months in back rent and 3 months going forward. In Davidson County, we are seeing that landlords are beginning to see their peers receive funds, and it's giving confidence that the diversionary court is truly the best way to recover rents and possession if that is what the parties desire. As a successful model, as successful as the Housing Resource Development Court is, it is only effective if people participate. Lawyers are an integral part in persuading landlords and tenants to participate. As a neutral party, there's only so much the judge can do to make this happen. At LAS, our Davidson County housing staff is limited. Legal Aid Society could use the financial support of Metro government to hire 2 new attorneys to work with General Sessions Court and the Housing Resource Diversionary Court to ensure that any tenants who want legal representation and meet our guidelines can have one. Such a move benefits everyone involved, including the landlord, the tenant, the court, and Metro taxpayers. A 2014 economic impact study showed that there is an $11 return on investment for every $1 invested in civil legal aid. That number has only grown with time. LES has seen a 100% success rate on landlords being paid and tenants maintaining housing or vacating housing without debt or negative eviction on their record. This allows them to find new housing without the scarlet letter E of eviction on their record. The unfortunate reality that we are also seeing is the lack of affordable housing in Davidson County. When we meet many of our clients, the desire to move out is mutual. Tenants need a clean record and time to find a suitable place to relocate. Increasingly, and unfortunately, that place is no longer in Davidson County. We currently have 2 open cases where one client will be moving to Columbia and the other to Mount Juliet. To restate the obvious, Davidson County needs more affordable housing if it hopes to maintain the diversity that makes it so special. The Legal Aid Society is here to help, and we will continue to support Davidson County and the Housing Resource Diversionary Court with the resources that we have, because we do know that we are stronger together. And in the last couple of seconds, I would like to applaud Judge Bell and her team. The housing navigators that have been employed have been wonderful. PATH and the Metro Action Commission, who my attorneys in our office have said have been extraordinary throughout this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from Commissioner Dash?
Thank you so much for being here. I think that Dr. Crooms alluded to it in her questioning, but she was talking about undocumented communities and was wondering if you might be able to just share sort of the barriers that undocumented communities may face through that process compared to someone that, is not undocumented.
For sure. One of the most apparent barriers is the lack of the Legal Aid Society's ability to assist. We do receive federal funding from the Legal Services Corporation, and one of the restrictions as a result of that funding is our inability to assist undocumented persons. We work with the Tennessee Alliance for Legal Services, Tennessee Justice for Our Neighbors, Turk, and other organizations to ensure that those persons who approach us for assistance have a resource to turn to. And it's not just a, referral. We actually work with them for that placement. In terms of language barriers or anything like that, I'm proud to say that Davidson County is very receptive and very attentive to that, as are we. We provide language line services as well as interpreters and staff who speak multiple languages to be available to them in court. But just like every other area of law, it is intimidating to persons who are undocumented to approach the court system. It is a barrier in that they would rather not appear at all. Even those who actually have status in this country will not come to court for the sheer fact that it's court.
Thank you.
Commissioner Vinnick.
Thank you again for being here today. I did some landlord-tenant work in the back in the day, and Ms. Sims made reference to the fact that apparently when the docket comes out, it comes out on a Friday for the next week. But those cases have been sitting for a while, and is it not correct that the circuit court clerk's office or the general sessions court has a list of those cases that have been filed and served, and when those cases are going to be set for hearing prior to the Friday before? Is that what happens? I'm trying to understand. Ms. Sims was talking about how when they come out, when the list comes out on a Friday, they have 3 days to sort of try to find those individuals, because you pointed out that many of the individuals who are showing up, being served with a detainer warrant, are not showing up at court. So basically, part of the problem there is trying to get people represented. Is there a way that information about who those people are can be notified or information available prior to 3 days before the docket coming out? That's what I'm trying to get a handle on.
I'm pretty sure that it's possible. I'm sure that time frame is limited. Now, I don't want to speak for the clerk's office for sure, but I mean, we have had opportunities where we can kind of look at the docket. As attorneys, we cannot solicit those clients. We can't, as attorneys, we can't knock on doors and say we can represent you. But what we can do is send information and say this service is available. Okay. Early on in the process, we actually collaborated with the Housing Resource Diversionary Court as well as Ricky Rooker to send out information to everyone that Judge Bell made reference to when she went and pulled down all 1,800. And we sent information directly to all persons on that eviction list to make them aware that legal services are available. And I think that's something that should be replicated ongoing, is that continuous flushing of information. And I will say, from our attorneys on staff, that is one of the policy recommendations that they certainly wanted to add, since you're asking, is more opportunity to advertise the resources that are available. People just don't know.
And just to follow up, I also noticed in the Red Door Collective report that there are a limited number of plaintiff attorneys who are handling most of these eviction cases. And does the Legal Aid Society have any communication ongoing with those counseled in order to try to divert or get those cases?
Absolutely.
Okay. And how successful has that been?
It's been very successful. As I mentioned in my statement, I believe landlords are beginning to see that the money is flowing, that it is coming. They just have to work the process. It becomes complicated when they try to circumvent the process by going to other courts, because it just delays and it puts a burden on the diversionary court to try and, get the dockets back straight so that we can get them on track. But yes, we have had much success, actually 100% success, working with landlords before it even gets to court if we can. Well, their attorneys, not so much the landlords, but from the bigger firms that are handling the majority of the cases. And that's what we'll continue to do, is if we can head it off before it ever gets to the courtroom, that's our goal.
So, and in particular, it looks like, one of the largest landlords who is evicting people is MDHA. Mm-hmm. And so what kind of communication has there been with MDHA to make these resources available from your office?
Similarly, we work with them and reach out to them. To be honest with you, before the pandemic and all of this started, MDHA was our primary opposing counsel. And so we have worked with them not only years, but for decades to ensure that people maintain housing. Our philosophy being that, honestly, if you've been evicted from public housing, you really have nowhere else to go. And so that has always been our priority for case acceptance, is to keep those persons in MDHA within their housing, because we recognize what the consequences will be if they lose that housing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Burden.
Thank you so much for being here. And
Absolutely.
thank you for telling us more about how legal aid works. I have two questions. One is there any kind of requirement or invitation for lawyers who don't want to work full-time for legal aid, maybe work for private firms, to do pro bono work or do work for with legal aid to help with the caseload?
Absolutely. As I mentioned in my statement, we have about a panel of about 400 attorneys across Middle Tennessee, not all centered in Davidson County, but across Middle Tennessee, who assist us in our pro bono efforts. We are actually doing a continuing legal aid education training in partnership with the Nashville Bar Association on Monday to train attorneys to be able to help us pro bono. Those pro bono attorneys are our lifeblood. With the 45 attorneys that we have on staff based on the 2010 census, there's only one attorney for every 10,000 people who are eligible for our services in Middle Tennessee. So we have to leverage the private bar and pro bono services, which we do. Oftentimes people don't realize that when they're looking for a pro bono attorney, they're actually still talking about us, because it takes someone who knows, it takes someone to make the connection between the attorney who knows how to do the work and the person who has the need, and we make that connection.
Okay. And with regard to the two additional attorneys that you say you need in your office to work on housing, is it possible for money that's been allocated for this housing relief, for any of that to be used for legal aid? Like, could you, is that even possible that those monies could mix so that that could happen?
Absolutely, it is. We actually just completed a deal on last Monday with the with THDA to provide attorneys and legal navigators throughout 48 counties in I shouldn't say 48 counties, throughout 46 counties in Middle Tennessee, which excludes Davidson County and Rutherford County, because they receive their independent ERAP funding directly. And so it will require the city to work directly with legal aid. We also literally this morning just signed a contract with Rutherford County to do the same thing. So all counties in Middle Tennessee at this point, except for Davidson, has funding directly from ERAP.
Thank you.
Thank you again for coming. Just two questions. One would be, out of the total number of evictions, what would your guess be that the percentage of the organization would be MDHA?
If I'm understanding your question, of our staff that are working in their caseload.
Yeah,
how much
in their
is MDHA?
caseload, what is the percentage? Because it sounds like what I'm hearing, that MDHA is one of the larger evictors.
What I was saying is, before the pandemic, even before the pandemic, that's our priority as an organization.
Okay.
Our priority is to start with MDHA. After that, our resources available then go to the general. but just within our organization, our priority is. That has not been the case since the MDHA has stopped their evictions. But that being said, I mean, there are still things that we do outside of non-payment of rent that require legal representation. For sure, the pandemic has made legal non-payment of rent the central issue, but there are other eviction matters that we have to address as well, which causes for us the limited resources because we do have attorneys that work in the courts. We need additional attorneys to address this.
So beyond money and attorneys, is there anything else that you would need that would be helpful?
Honestly, that is the main thing. That truly is the main thing. I can't tell you that, funding for advertising, just to let people know that the opportunity is available, whatever resources to continue to ensure that the collaborations between the nonprofits that are working continue to work. We need PATH. PATH needs legal aid. Legal aid needs Metro Action Commission. Metro Action Commission needs the court. It's all connected, and funding being made available to ensure that all the dots connect properly would be the request.
Thank you so much again for your time, Ms. Waller.
Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Carrie Dietz. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
You are. Thank you.
All right.
Good morning, and thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. My role in this is slightly different than that of, I believe, most of the other panelists, in that I am no longer working 9 to 5 in this space. Until the end of April, I was a housing attorney with Legal Aid Society, where I'd been for 4.5 years. And so I was working in Nashville, defending evictions before and through the entire pandemic. I left at the end of April to take a new job. I'm now an attorney with Branstetter, Strange & Jennings. However, I am staying involved in the housing and eviction space as a volunteer, partly just because there's a lack of resources. Like y'all heard, it can be helpful to have someone kind of explain what's going on. And then partly, while I was with Legal Aid, I started working with the Davidson County Continuum of Care Performance Evaluation Committee on kind of the homelessness side. I'm the chair of that performance evaluation committee that oversees the COC competition funds annually. And so I'm still doing that. I think an important thing to know is that it can be hard to wrap your mind around, because it is both true that there are people working in this space who are working very hard and doing more, giving even more than they really have to give. And yet it's not enough. And I think that's part of what we're seeing here. As far as I can tell, there's a data problem and a human problem. The data problem being that, especially when we're talking about these people that we've allowed to live on the fringes of the safety net, it can be hard to reach them when you need to, even if it's with help. It can be hard to get the resources and the tools necessary to connect them with that help. And so to some extent, we have a ways to go on data just to understand how bad the problem is. In addition to the people that are showing up in court or not showing up in court, having evictions filed against them, there are countless people who leave the first time that their landlord tells them to. Sometimes those people are undocumented and afraid of interacting with the court system. Sometimes those people just don't know that they have any options. They don't know that their landlord can't dump their stuff on the street without going through that court process. And there are some people too who fall into a little bit of a limbo where they need help, but the help that's out there, even though there is a lot more help out there right now in housing than there has been for a really long time, that help doesn't apply to them or doesn't work for them. So many of my clients that I worked with at Legal Aid, you know, partly due to the affordable housing crunch in Nashville, you know, the money that's available for tenants is usually money to get people off of the street into housing and money to prevent an eviction. So money to get someone off the street into housing and money to keep someone in their housing. I think what we're increasingly seeing in Nashville is that many, many people fall somewhere in between where they're facing an eviction, but for whatever reason, they don't want to stay where they are. Maybe they can't afford to. Maybe there are conditions issues that their landlord refuses to fix, and the landlord knows they can just move someone else in to pay rent. And so those people also kind of fall through the cracks. I think it is really important to do what we can to at least, you know, collect all of the data that we can that's out there. I'm so grateful for the work that MAC is doing, that PATH is doing, that Legal Aid continues to do, that Judge Bell and the Legacy Court, which I'm proud to have been involved in getting that launched, are doing. And I think, you know, they need that support of that data. I think the point about getting the dockets earlier, you know, this was something that I ran into a lot over my last year and a half working at Legal Aid. You know, there was the Princeton Eviction Project is this nationwide organization run by Matt Desmond, who wrote Evicted, and they work with localities to automatically pull data and to get the bigger picture of what's going on with the evictions, what zip codes are being affected, how can we kind of better target our resources. I worked for months to try to get Nashville connected with the Princeton Eviction Lab, only to find out at the end of the day that because of the way that our General Sessions Court clerk uploads and stores data, there's no way to. Somebody has to manually go in and collect all that data right now, instead of just having somebody kind of pull it. That's terrible. Red Door has been kind of stepping up to fill that gap, which is amazing, but it would be so much easier if we could collect that data more easily. I think, you know, the human problem is remembering that we need to value people and their lives over money. Again, in this rental market that we're seeing in Nashville, many landlords, you know, don't, even if they have access to the money, they may know that they can get somebody in who can pay more rent. One thing that I am hearing anecdotally and still working with volunteers and advocates on are complexes where largely people of color, maybe immigrant families, more, you know, the population trends that way. Their landlords are wanting to, you know, force an entire complex out, repaint, maybe do a little bit of work, and then bring somebody in who can pay a lot more rent. And so it's just a multi-layered issue. I think, you know, it's important to understand that we're working in a hostile environment. I think something that was affirming for me during 2020 and through April of this year was talking to people and explaining what was going on. You know, they were shocked. And I think the women who have talked before me are right, and that a lot of people just don't understand the extent of the problem or how hard it is to fix. But that doesn't mean that getting in there and doing the best that you can doesn't make a difference. I saw that as an attorney. The laws are not great for tenants, but having an attorney in court changes everything. Even if you can only empower your client by helping them understand what's happening and helping them make choices. So that's my 2 cents. I would defer to the people who are here in terms of the specific kind of policy asks and recommendations, since I am no longer working in this space 9 to 5. However, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Commissioner Burton.
Thank you for being here today, and I know we're going to hear from more people who are working on policy, but you said we're working in a hostile environment. Can you name some of the hostility? Just name it for us. What are some of the places where there is resistance and hostility?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, definitely the laws, the protections that are there for tenants are not a lot. Really, the laws were written to kind of facilitate evictions. And so that means that even, some of the stuff that's happened over the last year and a half, this has been the most tools that tenants in Tennessee have ever had. And yet we're still just not able to fix it. That's one thing. And then obviously, in terms of the policy, I know everyone in Nashville is always very concerned that anything we do is just going to encourage the state legislature to convene and tell us that we can't do it. And I think that adds to kind of like a freezing, a chilling component in terms of experimenting with policy. That's not enough. And then two, I just think landlords are better connected to our political and our resources. I mean, landlords are just better connected. They're just better connected. They are, they have an easier platform when they want to have a platform. They have easier access to understand what's going on. And on the other hand, you have tenants who, especially when you're facing an eviction, that's trauma. I assumed that all of my clients were dealing with some sort of trauma if they were facing an eviction. And it's hard enough to get up in the morning, feed your kids, get them to school. Especially most of my clients, when I was working at Legal Aid, were single Black moms. And, they're doing the best they can to take care of their kids and survive. And honestly, it was almost a full-time job for me to understand everything that changed in housing policy while I was at Legal Aid, especially during the pandemic. It's just, tenants just don't have easy access to those resources.
Commissioner Vinnick.
Thank you very much for being here today. So you have had the opportunity to function both in a staff position with Legal Aid Society and now in a volunteer resource position in private practice. And you mentioned one thing about perhaps the General Sessions Court Clerk's Office improving data collection. Is there any other suggestion you can offer that would assist attorneys representing individuals who are subject to eviction as either legal aid from the legal aid side or from the private practice volunteer side?
Yeah, that's a great question. The data is huge. I think I'm so glad to hear about all the progress that's being made at the legacy court and that legal aid is doing these CLEs. I think part of the thing that people don't understand is, because of the nature of evictions, really no one other than legal aid does eviction defense, tenant advocacy regularly. There's just not a lot of funding for it. The Tennessee Fair Housing Council does some. So to some extent, it's access to the information. And understanding General Sessions Court can be scary for attorneys who don't practice there regularly. So I think to some extent there's a barrier there. And then the other thing that I think is really important is allowing the attorney to do their expertise and filling in the other needs. So whether that's a social worker, whether that's a housing navigator. Housing navigators, I mean, it's hugely, hugely helpful. But even so, they usually take about 3 months to find someone a place to go. But if you have a housing navigator working on your behalf to find housing, your attorney is free to think about your best defense and give you the best advice. I did a lot of social work and a lot of, housing navigation as an attorney at Legal Aid Society, and eventually realized, I could spend all of my time doing that and just not help anyone. Because, I have this law degree and I needed to be using that. And so that was really hard for me because often there weren't those resources to fill in. So I think an attorney and then also kind of that social work perspective would also be hugely helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Just real quickly, you made a comment that was quite interesting to me, which is to say that our system is designed to get people off the streets and into housing, which is what the funding for, and then to prevent immediate evictions, which seems to be more urgent needs. But you mentioned that there's a third group or class in which we're trying to maintain their housing. To what extent does this group that you're seeing increase in size, to what extent are they outside the guidelines, be they stipulated by MAC, be they stipulated by, whatever the AMI requirements are for this kind of aid and funding? I mean, this is with increase in rents, there are greater burdens that may be outside the guidelines. To what extent is this new group of people that you're talking about outside the guidelines that are currently stipulated?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, typically, it just kind of starts on the front end in terms of the types of funding that are out there. That's just kind of what I came to understand over time, sending clients to try and get help. The money. There are lots of pots of money. I mean, there's not enough money, but there are pots of money, to get people off of the streets. And, not enough, long waiting list. And then there's money to keep someone in their house, keep someone in their housing. But in terms of someone who maybe needs to move out in order to avoid an eviction, right? They're not going to be able to make it work with their landlord. But if they move out, their landlord will agree to dismiss the eviction and protect their record, which can be huge. But they might need a little bit of money to close that gap, pay the security deposit at a new place, and moving is expensive. And because they have housing that they don't want to stay in, those funding sources aren't open to them. And that's just a whole population that I think is really growing in Nashville right now, given the conditions of the rental market and the real estate market, that there just isn't a ton of resources for.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll have Lee Myers from the Red Door Collective.
So,
Hopefully that works.
so this is,
Yes.
okay. Awesome. Good morning, everyone. So, my name is Lee Myers. I'm a representative of Red Door Collective, and I do volunteer data work for the organization. So we only have 7 minutes, so I'm going to try and keep it brief and to the point, but there's a lot of intricacies I could talk about this data set. But again, since we have a time constraint, it's going to be very brief and on surface level. So what is Red Door Collective? Red Door Collective is a Democratic Socialists of America, Middle Tennessee centered campaign around the decommodification of housing and the pushing of housing as a human right. And we do this primarily through tenant empowerment, relationship building, and tenant organizing, as well as data tracking and data collection. We manually track data in the court because the data is inaccessible despite being, quote unquote, publicly accessible. So what this means is that we go through a Metro software called CaseLink. And what CaseLink is it's like a very antiquated software where you have to look at each individual case and the documents, and then we extract data from that, particularly from detainer warrants and judgments. And so we do this not only because there's a lack of transparency in the court system, but in partnership with PAF, we've also noticed a lot of questionable conduct between judges in terms of lack of consistency in judgments between judges, as well as failure to notify people of court date changes, and all around a lack of adequate capacity in the court system. And so, eviction crisis is only one particular violent aspect of Nashville's housing crisis, and I would be remiss not to mention other aspects of Nashville's housing crisis. In particular, we're seeing skyrocketing property values, an increase of population growth, skyrocketing rent, and we're seeing it compound with an issue that has historically been present in Nashville in terms of housing segregation and how a lot of the policy emphasis in modern Nashville tends to parallel with the urban renewal, only this time it's under the guise of deconcentrating poverty. And so as I move into the data and what I want to talk about, it'd be helpful to sort of distinguish between a few terms. And again, this is very on the surface and there's a lot of intricacies that I'm not really mentioning. But the detainer warrant is the initial summons to a court, and so we draw all of our data from court data, and so a judgment is a particular judge's ruling, and then we broadly divide them into three categories, but there are more based on like whether dismissal is by the lawyer, the prosecuting lawyer, or by the judge who just doesn't find merit to the case. But we've sort of subdivided them into possession and fees, and then dismissal. And so an eviction, what we categorize as a legal eviction, is when a judgment rules in favor of possession or in favor of possession and fees, but that does not capture all of the data and does not necessarily capture all of the displacement in Nashville. And so data points, so up to the initial moratorium of the CARES Act, Nashville is averaging about 10,000 evictions a year. Since 2020 and since the two moratoriums that have come in place, it's been about 6,281 detainers falling in the calendar year of 2020 alone. We've noted that affordable housing providers are the largest filers of eviction, that the evictions are geographically separated and show class character. We noticed less evictions in Bellevue and Belmead compared to the rest of the city, and that because we are drawing from court data, we're underreporting the total amount of evictions in Davidson County. And this has been confirmed by the excellent work that Workers' Dignity has done in Mosaic Apartments in Dickerson Road, which show particular apartment complexes going through extra legal means to displace and remove tenants from their homes. And we've noticed this prevalent across communities of color all across Davidson County. And so also, the total amount of in the court system, we've noticed about a handful of lawyers, particularly 4, account for over half of the eviction cases in the court system, which has been mentioned at this hearing. And so, And so you can see here a chart we compiled of the top 10 evictors of Davidson County, particularly you'll notice the affordable housing providers, Elmington Property Management, the Metro Development Housing Association, or MDHA, Urban Housing Solutions, and Woodbine Community Organization. Now, aliases change when particular affordable or particular housing complexes want to file evictions. Sometimes we see something like Hickory Highlands, we'll see Nashville Portfolio, something, then Hickory Highlands, or in the case of Woodbine Community Organization, Woodbine, once they changed the lawyer from Todd Hunter Hancock to Wes Hall, has been going on their Village of the Green, which is a particular property that they have in their possession as opposed to their larger organizational name. And so the lawyers that we have who are responsible, or the big law firms responsible for most evictions, are William Henry Chopin, who does most of the MDHA cases, but since has not been doing it as frequently since they discontinued filing detainers after catching heat in 2020. Gary Stephen Rubenstein, Michael Wesley Hall, and Jennifer Jo McCoy are the big evictors. And as you can see, I believe there was a question asked about to what extent are we seeing MDHA. And so for the calendar year of 2020, you can see the total amount of percentile of MDHA eviction cases. And then we also have fees. And so what we're seeing in evictions is a massive transfer of wealth. Over millions of dollars are being transferred from tenants and may not immediately be paid to landlords, but they are in bondage and debt to landlords. And then, again, you can see for the map sort of the geographic disparities in eviction cases, particularly less in the west, southwest Nashville, Bellevue, Belmead area compared to the rest of the county. And so how can Nashville and the country move forward? We, as a group that believes in the decommodification of housing, ultimately that's the long-term goal we want to get to, is that we want housing as a human right for everyone. But there are other more immediate things. Nashville can support a tenant bill of rights with strong legal protections in terms of sort of guiding and interacting how landlords and tenants interact, and as well as providing strong, I guess, a right to legal counsel for tenants. And then I guess I'm over time, so I'm going to conclude real quick. Strong investments in genuine and affordable public housing. No more of this privatizing, deconcentrating poverty. We need housing. We need genuine public housing accountable to tenants. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And before I take questions, I also just want to say thank you for what the Red Door Collective has been doing, and that oftentimes policy really needs data. And we thank you for the effort that you all are putting forward. Are there any questions from the commissioners?
have a couple. Thank you
Commissioner
very much
Vinnick.
for being here today. Just a couple of questions. First, have you been able to identify how many of the evictions have been the result of a default judgment as opposed to a hearing?
Yes, it varies month to month, but well over half of the eviction judgments are by default, where the tenant just cannot show up to court for whatever reason. I will say I've heard a story about a tenant who was going to appeal an eviction judgment, but because they couldn't catch a bus, they couldn't make it. And so these issues also intimately tie into transit and other economic issues.
So do you have that data that you can provide to us in terms of numbers?
There should be in the eviction, the Red Door Collective Report, a specific figure for default judgments.
Okay. Second question I had is, have you noticed any disparity or any difference between those landlords who are willing to accept funds that are available through Metro Action Commission or other sources as opposed to other landlords?
Could you clarify the question?
Well, for example, I mean, you identify a bunch of affordable housing providers that are large evictors. I'm just wondering whether or not those entities also seem to be more inclined to accept a mediated response where they get funds as opposed to other landlords.
I'd say we have noticed that behavior. More affordable providers are more amenable given their mission prerogative. When I point to affordable providers being the biggest prevalent factor of evictions, I would say it's more of a market failure, as well as a personal responsibility, but more of a market failure and sort of a policy failure in terms of how we're solving the housing crisis.
Mm-hmm. And finally, you pointed up some what you characterize as questionable conduct, and you talked about failure of consistency among judges, lack of capacity, and a failure to notify. Could you talk a little bit more about those three things?
Yeah, gladly. So I can tell you I've seen Judge Holt in particular misread a EUROTA guideline into which a particular tenant was right and eventually got their case dismissed by another judge after Holt continued it. And I've seen particular judges be condescending to tenants in terms of their particular awareness of the law. I've seen substitute judges say, it's not my problem when it comes to someone losing their house and having nowhere to go. In terms of notification, I've seen tenants show up to court thinking that they had a specific court date where they took time off for work to actually show up, and then just to hear that their court date changed, and then they leave frustrated and unhappy.
Thank you very much.
You said that court data underreports total displacement. What exactly does that mean?
So I would say what we categorize as a legal eviction is generally something as a possession and fees. But when I'm going through the e-file judgments, I often see tenant has vacated prior to judgment, no eviction. And so that means the tenant was still forced to move from their location and still forced to pay a certain amount of fees. Even though they may not have a legal eviction on the record, they still had to move. It's just about as good as an eviction, just probably no legal penalties.
So what percentage is that you would say?
I don't have a particular percentage, but I'll say it's very common.
Okay.
I just want to go back to CaseLink, and you just mentioned that it was antiquated. Can you give me a little more detail as to like how or why it's antiquated in your opinion?
Yeah, so I would say the software sort of functions like it was developed in the early 2000s, late 1990s. You have to click on a particular, so if you want to click on a particular document, like view a detainer warrant, it pulls up a separate window with a PDF, and these detainers are often handwritten or have some sort of handwriting, so it's very hard to sort of read legibly. And then so it's a time-consuming process to be able to look at these detainer warrants and then enter them into a separate spreadsheet and sort of look at it in an aggregate formulaic way.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's great irony that the providers of affordable housing are the biggest evictors in the city. And I wanted to ask if you could qualify what an affordable housing provider is. Do they benefit from public-private partnerships? Do they get tax breaks? Are they siphoning off funds that are supposed to go to affordable housing, yet they're the ones who are the biggest evictors in the city?
I would say it's functioning as it's supposed to in the way that, it's what it signals to me is that it's a structural issue, whereas affordable housing providers, typically they go from 60 to 80% of AMI. I will tell you that I used to work at one, and one of my supervisors told me that we're not trying to provide, and I quote, Joe Crackhead a home. But I believe Joe Crackhead deserves a home, and that anyone who needs housing deserves a home. So there's a particular subset that affordable housing providers and sort of target, and this affordable housing itself is kind of a slippery term because of it's talking like 60 to 80% of area median income. So there's a lot of people who get left out.
So, real quick question to follow up. Does that mean that these providers are targeting Section 8 housing, or are they benefiting from Section 8 housing policies and so forth?
Some of them do accept Section 8 vouchers, some of them do not. Some of them just don't benefit from it and just want to provide housing to someone who is working and meets certain respectability criteria, but otherwise could not afford housing.
Can you tell me if you know what percentage of people who were evicted were people of color and undocumented people? Do you have that information?
We do not have that information. The court detainer warrants that we track does not provide that to us. We're just now getting a glimpse with PAF's Court Watch effort.
Thank you so much for your, oh, I'm sorry, did I cut you
I had a
off?
follow-up question. Some of these properties I'm not familiar with. So I'm wondering if you can tell me the number of these properties that serve primarily people of color and undocumented people.
Yeah, I will say the predominant ones that have been in the news lately that have served communities of color are Mosaic Apartments, which Workers' Dignity has shown, as well as the Dickerson Road trailer parks.
Okay.
And Blue Note, which as El Mahaba has shown a light on as well.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your coming and sharing with us today, and also the work that you're constantly doing on this issue. Next, we'll hear from Sarah Fiegel from NCRC.
At this point, I'm not going to bother with the presentation. Because I don't need to repeat what many of my colleagues have said. I'm going to try and adapt to make use of my time. First, just very quickly, for those of you who don't know, the Nashville Conflict Resolution Center is the nonprofit mediation center for Davidson County and really serving most of Middle Tennessee at this point. We've been working in Davidson County for 21 years. And just to give you a little bit of context, in fiscal year of 21 that just closed out, we provided 934 free mediations, right? Keeping people from punitive court judgments or police interactions, et cetera. And I would say since March, since the MAC Hope portal opened up, we have taken care in Davidson County alone of 439 cases. Right now we're averaging about 16 per week. Now what we do is we work with landlords and tenants to try and keep them from a court judgment, right? Now I will just say quickly the benefits of mediation for those of you who might think of it in terms of high-profile divorces or great big, contract things. We're talking about bringing people to sit down together at a table where we are able, as trained mediators, to level the power imbalance, right? So mediate, when we bring landlords and tenants together in the courtroom or hopefully prior to court filing, sometimes as a continuance, we can level the incredible power imbalance that you've been hearing about and help landlords and tenants hear each other as humans instead of seeing each other as problems. This generally works. It doesn't mean we are able to preserve housing for everyone who wants housing preserved by any stretch of the imagination, but because we can work with landlords and tenants in a way that is trauma-informed, recognizing that, of course, fear of eviction is trauma, we can reality test a range of solutions that would not be viable in a court setting. And we are able to ensure that the dignity and feelings of control are maintained for both parties. And I think, as you've heard, this vulnerability is one of the really critical human concerns that we have for tenants now facing eviction. I will just say also, overall, we're looking at a crisis of Nashville's sense of community. And every single mediation that we do brings people together who begin feeling that the problem is that other person. And if we can help them hear each other, they may not agree at the end, they may still have a problem at the end, but they feel like they belong to the same community and that there is a community that supports them. So I just want you to understand that this service does a whole lot more than just clearing people off the docket. Now, I'd like to make some observations or share observations we've made about both landlords and tenants. First of all, on the landlord side, I would say we also have seen that most attorneys representing larger property companies are definitely participating in rent relief efforts. And I would push back a little against Commissioner Tran and say it's not that they're benefiting. I wouldn't be cynical about this. I would say that they can afford to wait, right? These are companies, the larger companies can afford to wait through a process, and they're willing to wait through a process, and they're still going to take losses. No one's making money on the, but smaller landlords do not have this luxury. And what we are seeing is it's the smaller landlords, often, there's a whole group of landlords who don't have attorney representation in the General Sessions Court. And they don't know how to present cases. They don't really, they don't have the social supports, and for many of them, they don't have the luxury of waiting anymore. It's the assistance, the financial assistance that now is working a little bit more smoothly is too little too late. So we are seeing a ton of evictions. And we're seeing landlords sell out because they're facing bankruptcy. Okay, so it's not just the big bad guys. I think it can be very easy, as we're so worried about our vulnerable residents becoming homeless. It's easy to villainize property owners, and I think that that's a little bit facile. And we need to be a little bit more rigorous in our understanding that this problem expands far beyond merely the very, very vulnerable, right? We have spent a lot of time talking today about, for instance, the rent relief and how it does work and what its challenges are, but it's very important to keep in mind that MAC is only allowed to help people up to that 80% of the area median income. That means a single parent with one child making $60,000 a year in Nashville cannot get assistance. We all know, okay, if you don't have anything, that sounds like a lot of money. We all know what Nashville prices are now. If someone makes $60,000 a year and was out of work for 6 months or had to stay home with that child for 6 months, that person has accrued debt that can't be repaid, right, easily. We have a whole slew of kind of lower middle income people in Davidson County now who are facing very swift downward mobility. And unless we want to have an even larger problem of the very poor trying to figure out how to help them, we'd better also understand that we need to create supports for this, lower middle income group of people that don't qualify for any of this federal money, right? They don't. We were able to help them with CARES funds in the fall and winter. These people they are out there in the thousands, and they're not being helped at the moment. Now I've gone on a little bit about that. Let me just, because I'm going to run out of time here. Tenants, no, I'm not even going to. I would like to say that our experience, we've worked quite a lot with property owners and with attorneys as mediators. Ironically, we have partnered with everyone who's spoken today except legal aid, because we tend to work in parallel, right? If legal aid is involved in a case, they're not going to mediate. I'm just going to finish my sentence. But we do, as a result of this last year, we are working really hard with property owners and with attorneys to try and mediate cases prior to the filing of court papers. We've also worked with a number of property managers who know that their tenants, because of language barriers and documentation status, are going to be very reluctant to appear in court. And they have done heroic efforts. I mean, literally walking to every single door in huge apartment complexes to say, let's try to get things mediated. There are no bad guys here. I mean, there are probably a few bad guys in every sub-pocket of the population we've discussed today, but overall, there's no one group that can be villainized. All of them are desperately in need of help. Okay, I'll stop now.
Thank you again. First, before I give way to questions, I am grateful for you giving voice to that overlooked segment that is really struggling also. I've had multiple individuals who are small property owners who mortgage the house they live in to buy the duplex that now they can't afford to pay. So I think that is a critical issue that we also need to give attention to. But I guess my question would be to you, in the work that you do, how, since people have to agree to do that, how often do you think that both parties agree, and which party tends not to want to be involved in conflict resolution?
There's no question that usually, let's say a defendant, right, a person who is, if we're in a court setting, a defendant is more likely to want whatever help is available, but sometimes that's not the case. We had a number of tenants say, I don't want to deal. I would say prior to the pandemic, private landlords were often very willing to talk, because the thing about mediation is there's no risk involved. It's not arbitration or negotiation. There's no requirement to reach a resolution. It is an opportunity to sit down with a neutral facilitator who's very well trained to see if we can't kind of find other things going on, right? Put everything on the table to see if there's a solution that can meet all the needs. And if not, no harm, no foul. That's why we pay the judges the big bucks, right? Most of the time, things that seem to have a very simple fact pattern, like you haven't paid the rent and now you have to leave, are just the tip of an iceberg of so many issues which once negotiated can produce really gratifying outcomes. Again, it's not a magic wand, but we'll have people who tenants who then will say, well, okay, I do recognize I can't maintain this rent level, we'll leave, but could we stay in the spring? We had people saying, could I stay until the end of the school year so I don't disrupt my children's education by pulling them out of the school district, in April? And landlords would say, of course you can. And let's just try, we'd be creative. Many private landlords are willing to start with mediation. Prior to the pandemic, the attorneys wouldn't give it a thought because it just isn't part of that culture. Because of the work that we've now done in the last year, we have very good relationships with them, and many of them will ask us, in fact, to help.
Thank you.
I think that you used your 7 minutes so well to lay down the landscape. So I do want to give a little bit of extra time to just answer the question of what more support do you need for your work, and who would you love to see that come from?
I would echo a few things that have been mentioned. Judge Bell said, well, no, she said she wanted to seal the records. I just wanted to say, yes, we need to seal the records, and I don't know what is involved legally. Updating CaseLink would be an enormous help. There's no question. Again, let's not villainize the clerk's office. Ricky Rooker didn't invent CaseLink. That office has done, again, yeoman's work, heroic work, working with all of us in the community to try and help get information out. It's just very difficult to do. Updating CaseLink would be helpful because one of the things we have done is 4 cases that have tried, that already have entered the legal system, we have a challenge trying to reach tenants. Because, for lots of reasons, I don't want to use our time here, but when a detainer warrant is filed, there's not necessarily a phone number, even a phone number for the tenant provided. There's only an address. So all you have is snail mail, and that address, it's very complicated. So case link, definitely. Obviously, we all need funding, right? We all need funding, and we're all facing declining funding. I would love to have a couple more mediators so that I could be in both 1A and 1B Monday through Friday. Right now, I can't afford that. And because of the pandemic, we can't use volunteers. Our usual volunteer pool is uncomfortable and can't be used the same way. I think those are the easiest things that would help us do our job better.
That's helpful, thank you.
Always appreciate the work being done by the Nashville Conflict Resolution Center. If you can clarify something for me, do I understand that the THDA money that was referenced by Director Crooms earlier is also subject to the same income limitations as the other rental assistance money?
I would have to add, I have not read the Treasury guidelines there.
Okay.
I suspect, and perhaps Dr. Crooms could answer this.
Yeah, okay.
I suspect that there are, it still hasn't opened up fully.
Well, I'm trying to address the issue of whether there is any funding source for those people who are not, not eligible for the.
To my knowledge, no. And I heard Dr. Crooms talk about this need to expand to include the 81 to 100% of area median income. I would say going to 150% of area median income would just begin to help some of these crises of families who are going to fall into poverty and need more tax dollars if we can't just help them now.
And I appreciated the distinction you made between the small landlords and the large landlords. And is there any process in place to try to reach out to those smaller landlords to try to provide them the same kind of assistance?
You've heard all of us talk about that 1,800 cases.
Right.
I recruited a volunteer army. We called every single person on the docket. I no longer have staff to do that. I cannot do that on unless someone can give me 2 more people. I think that it's a problem of contact, and I hate to have to wait until people come to court. At that point, the landlords are also suffering trauma. There's often shame, and there's fear, and they don't want to be seen as a bad guy, and so it often expresses as aggression or anger. But in fact, if we can reach them day of, if I have enough people in the court to say, you know what, let's sit down, everything shifts, and they think they don't want to even go talk about the portal, but if, and in many cases, their tenants make that $10 too many to be eligible. But if they are eligible, if we can sit down with them, then we can help them understand the value. It's just a question of how do we get to these people sooner?
Any other questions? Thank you so much. Excuse me?
I just had a question about outreach, which Commissioner Vernick asked.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today. Next, we have Victoria Tobin from the Greater Nashville Apartment Association.
Hi there. Thank you for having me today. My name is Victoria Tobin. I am the president of the Greater Nashville Apartment Association. We represent owners and managers of multifamily apartment properties across Middle Tennessee, including Davidson County, in total about 130,000 units. Our members are generally property management companies or corporations involved in development and management of larger multifamily properties. Generally speaking, those small individual property owners that Sarah talked about are generally not members of our organization. They may own rental properties as an income supplement. They're more often than not members of GNAA. Our focus is making sure that our members are represented and have a voice at the table when public policy affecting multifamily residential property is debated at the local, state, and the national level. Our goal here is to help policymakers and individual residents understand that our members want to see their units occupied by residents. Sometimes it's easy to paint all landlords with a broad brush because of tenant disputes with a handful of property owners, but our members want residents to stay in their homes, and they want them to keep current on their rent. That is how we measure success. We have made a concerted effort to pass along information about max rent relief programs to our residents. We've helped educate them about how to apply for the program, and when they've fallen behind in their rent because of a job loss or pandemic-related illness, we've worked with residents to figure out a way to get them current again. In many cases, our property managers have provided residents with food, gas, and other necessities when they've been battling to stay housed. We have reached out to MAC to assist in getting contact information for communities when they have indicated that they're missing documentation from the landlord. That documentation is essential to process those applications. Our biggest concern is that property managers are being painted with a broad brush as the bad guy in the current pandemic-related housing crisis. The truth is, most of our members have gone out of their way to help their residents stay in their homes. And everyone here knows that just because a resident stops paying rent, it doesn't mean that maintenance, utilities, property taxes, and other costs go away. It's my hope that policymakers in Nashville understand that we are partners with them in addressing the housing problems that we face. We are not their adversaries. Among our members, there was a general concern that the pace of federal rent relief funding being rolled out to property owners was initially very slow. We understand that MAC was being asked to create a program from scratch, and we're very sympathetic. But many property managers didn't see benefits from rent relief until July of 2021. That is 17 months after the start of the pandemic. The other challenge that we face is a lack of data to give us an idea of the size and scope of the problem and where in our community it is most acute. We are told by a national nonprofit, Servo Ventures, that some 20,000 people in Davidson County are behind on their rent and that they owe an average of $3,500 each. That adds up to $70 million in Davidson County alone. We're told by community organizations that landlords are rejecting proposed settlements coming out of Judge Bell's courtroom, but we need to know what is the size and scope of the problem. Are those landlords our members? Are they individual property owners? To address the problem, we need more data. We are hopeful that the amount of collaboration between the courts, Metro, and our members will continue and even grow. We believe more data would be helpful in understanding the nature of the problem. How many people are being evicted in Davidson County? And where are those evictions taking place? We would also like some sense of how much of the federal rent relief money allocated to Nashville has been issued to applicants. Would it be possible to include a dashboard showing how many people have successfully utilized the HOPE program? The current data tracks approved funding, which can be misleading as it has been taking weeks and sometimes months to disperse those funds. Together we can help people, but only if we understand the size and the scope of the problem. And to do that, we need more data. I believe we can make significant progress working together, and I appreciate you in having GNAA be part of this process.
Thank you. Are there questions? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you so much for being here today. Just a couple of questions. I'm having a hard time with that. So you mentioned that GNAA represents property managers that manage 130,000 units in Davidson. Do you know what the total number of rental units are in Davidson County?
I don't have that data.
Okay.
We do work on statistics reports that we do annually, and so we try to have a general idea year over year how much there is growth, but to have an actual total number, we do not, because many of those rental properties are in fact owned by those single owners.
Okay. You made mention of an entity, a company with Servo Ventures. And what is the name of that entity?
Servo Ventures, they did some data. They are a nonprofit. They're a national nonprofit, and their data with regard to how much in rental arrears is actually happening across the country is the data that we use, showing 70 million in Davidson County.
And is that data readily available, or is that a membership only?
I'm certain I can get that for you.
Great, that would be very helpful. And I would also be interested in just seeing the information that GNNA has been made available to its members regarding rental assistance programs. You know, I really appreciate you doing that. I think it's, as you point out, it's to the benefit of everybody to try to get people access to those sources.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dash.
I might be the squeaky wheel. I've asked this question a lot, but just wanting to ask about sort of the tactics and kind of piggybacking off of Commissioner Vinnick. What are the tactics that you all use to get the information out to communities that may not speak English? You know, how are landlords kind of tackling that situation, and just kind of what you've been hearing?
Absolutely. As an organization, we are certainly getting the word out to our members. So our members are owners, our members are operators, our members are property managers, our members are maintenance people. They are everyone who work in the multifamily industry. So we are reaching out to our membership via direct email. We're reaching out via social media. We've shared information on our website, and we've also had a few roundtable discussions about it at different networking meetings that we've had to get that information out. Now, once they've received that information, I know that there are a lot of different ways that they're getting the information to residents. Some of them are doing door knocking. Some of them are doing flyers that they're leaving at doors. Some of them have even hosted events where they have someone there who can help explain to people, these are your options. This is the website. This is where you can apply for the MAC Hope funds. So certainly I feel as though they are absolutely doing everything that they can to make sure that people are aware that the funding is available and that they need to apply.
Thank you.
Commissioner Burton? No.
Mr. Tobin, you made mention that it would be helpful for your organization to have more data. What kind of data would be helpful?
Well, I think that, you know, what we're hearing is we're hearing anecdotal issues. So we hear Judge Bell say, landlords are refusing the rental assistance. Tell us who they are. Who is refusing the rental assistance? What are the reasons that they're giving for refusing rental assistance? I think that we are trying to solve this very large housing problem using anecdotal evidence, and it makes it very difficult to address it on a larger level. And we can't do that without data. Why are those funds being refused? Is it a single landlord who is facing bankruptcy on their own? Are they being forced to sell that property because they can't afford to carry that mortgage for 18 months without any rent or rental assistance? So just more data, I think, on where we are falling short is very important. And then obviously for my members, time. If they are approved for rental assistance, why 2 months later are they still waiting to receive payment? 3 months later, they're still waiting to receive payment. And they're not able to check on the update of that application other than your application's been approved. That's all they know. So for a larger landlord, you know, as Sarah mentioned, that might not be an issue. For a mom and pop landlord who might own one property or two properties, 3 months could be the difference in being able to keep that property or having to sell that property. And once they sell, is that going to be one less unit available on the market for rental? Because we don't know what happens to that property once it gets sold. It may become someone's home, given the influx of residents that the area has seen.
So you're saying that it's your experience that there have been individual landowners who've been told that their application was approved and they're waiting up to 90 days to get payment on an approved application?
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions from? Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And again, we're running just a little over time, but we're grateful for you coming, and we definitely want to hear from Mr. Eddie Latimer today.
I was getting hopeful I wasn't going to have to do this, but I'm honored to be here, and I really thank this commission. Y'all have a reputation throughout the city for leading, and which means you make hard choices, and you're not risk averse, and you all make a bigger impact than a lot of commissions because of that. So thank you. I want to, I'm going to hit two things, but basically I work for Affordable Housing Resources. We are one of the 9 nonprofits in the city whose mission every morning is to put sticks and bricks together to create new housing, affordable housing. The nonprofit community that is involved in this are those 9, but there's hundreds of social service nonprofits who are also involved in this issue. And they are the ones who have really sacrificed a lot of staff and staff time working with the clients who need this rental assistance. And so it's a broad system, and without that network of social service nonprofits who are already involved with these clients, things would move even worse. I'm just going to say that. Those groups keep their clients and their people moving forward. I want to really comment on 2 things, is that one of them is what we're not paying attention to is the loss of affordable housing that is occurring in massive numbers due to these programs not working. As it was been pointed out, is a lot of landlords, really most landlords in her association really want this to work. They'd rather get their money than to go through extra costs of eviction. But they can't hold out forever. Also, this is a real interesting article. The Tennessean ran an article about a month ago where they identified by name 10 properties, larger multifamily properties, who have sold out to out-of-town people, and they're going to double the rent. And all it takes to double the rent on these properties is a coat of paint, new carpet, occasionally new granite, and new shrubs. That's it. It's a minimal expense. And all of a sudden you go from $800 to $1,600 a month, or $1,600 to $3,200 a month. So the problem is that by just sort of piddling and paying these rents, we are losing units because, as been pointed out by many people that preceded me, is the landlord cannot hold out forever. We've heard stories of them mortgaging their own home to keep their company solvent. So I'm concerned that no one has pointed that out. I'm concerned that no one's paying attention to that. But we are bleeding affordable units that will take us years and years, our industry, years and years to replace. The second thing is transparency, is that there's overall a lack of transparency in this entire system, in the sense of why was it made so difficult? Why did we take a system that was easy to work under the CARES Act? And this goes back to the federal government, it goes back to local, state government, and it involves local government. It involves all 3 of those. But why did we take money that that we put out easily before and make it difficult? Well, the lack of transparency is the main issue. Why was it determined that this was a checklist? Can I get y'all to put these up there? All right, I want y'all to see this if you can. This is, I think, Irvin, you asked this question earlier, is what is the current checklist of documents that people have to submit? Yeah, just keep scrolling all the way to the next page if you would. But this is what was required on the CARES Act money. We have not seen this list for the ERA 1 money, which is the money that was put out in December. So just look at this. So on the second page is just where you got to sign. I'm not lying to you. So if you would go to the PDF, I want you to see the list of documents you got to present to a bank to get an $800,000 mortgage. I mean, it's nothing. So why do we as a society insist on being so mean to low-income workforce? I mean, you figure that out. I cannot figure this out, but this is a cause of the problem. Professional lenders who are supported by people who care about their money make it easier to put their money on the street than we do to put Congress's money on the street. Why is that? I don't know, because there's no transparency in this program from the top down. We don't know why certain things were chosen. We don't know why we wanted to make it more onerous. I can tell you one reason is because they were scared of the 3% of the people who will con the program. And guess what? There's always the 3%. If this was a banking hearing, the banks could tell you great stories about rich people trying to get bad loans out of them. I mean, this is just the fallen human nature. And so the issue is we're more worried about, we're more fearful of a mistake than we are encouraging about doing the right thing. And we've got to get over this. We have got to get over this, and we've got to go out there and trust its partners. And the best partners the city has for a program like this are the nonprofits, because they work with these people every day. They know these people. They can smell a con when it walks in the door. But that's why they have very few people that get sent out, because they know it's a minimum number. But the issue is this is a high-touch thing. All right, most of the people suffering in this program are under $20 an hour. Do you know what their biggest form of communication is? This. Do you know that most people under $20 an hour do not own a computer? This was one of those surprise things. We were able to help, by the way, about 145 people with rental assistance using MDHAs and the city's CARES Act money. You cannot fill out the application on a phone. Why is it difficult? We don't know, because we're not transparent. That's my 7 minutes.
Thank you. I'm sure there are questions. Everyone.
Thank you so much for being here. So a couple of questions. First, I think was there a distinction between the application process for the CARES money as opposed to the current rental assistance money, or is it the same process as far as documentation?
Yeah, there was. But the main thing is that, and this happened in a lot of situations, is they went from a handwritten application to a computer-generated application, which we all could handle very easily. But the lower income people who may not have finished high school, they don't do that well. Right. And the application requires downloading documents. You cannot do this on a phone.
Is that a federal requirement, or is there a local flexibility?
I don't know if it's a federal requirement, and I don't know what the application looks like. We can scroll. I got the whole application up here if you want me to scroll through it real quick, but we don't know that.
Okay. And I asked the question to Ms. Tobin as far as the number of rental units in Davidson County. Do you know what the total number of rental units are in Davidson County right now?
Do that one more time.
Total number of rental units in Davidson County?
No.
No, okay. Thanks.
Commissioner Dash.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I was just wondering if I could ask, have you seen a copy of this application in any other language other than English?
No, I don't have one. I've asked for one, but I don't have one. And I think it's the way it's wired into the system is what I've been told is very difficult to copy it, reproduce it, so you have a document.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Following up, but is the application available in other languages?
Yes, they do. They've done a good job with that. That's a federal thing. That's the advantage of some federal money.
Got you. Okay. Thank you for that. I do have another question. I'm looking at the application, and it is more than I had to go through to refinance my home. I mean, it's like, I got asked like 5 questions. But my question is, on one of them, it talks about a third-party identification for children under 18. What is that from a school, or how do you get a third-party ID from, is it a birth certificate? What is that? Do you know?
No, we were not involved with the ERA 1 program, the December.
Right, I understand.
So I don't even understand where the question came from. I'm like you.
Okay, just curious.
It's very nonsensical.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mr. Latimer, we definitely appreciate all of your years of work trying to address this. I have one question for you that's tied to this. Would aggressively addressing the critical shortage in affordable housing actually result in lowering rents all around? And if that's a yes, how much money does that take in your mind?
Okay, we're looking at, we're a blessed city because of the Amazon money. It's really going to help us create units. But we're looking at trying to do a 220-unit apartment complex that's over $40 million. So it's very, very expensive. Pretty much to build a low-income housing tax credit unit is $150,000 per unit. So we used to be able to build them for 60 and 70, and that was easier. So we really need to find ways, new creative ways to create this with patient capital, grant funds, but I don't think there's enough grant money in the world to do it. We have to find new sources of funds to create this with. Did that answer that?
Yes, it did. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank y'all for doing this.
I want to thank the entire commission. And as we wrap this up, I want to give a couple minutes or less to each commissioner, starting with Commissioner Burton coming on around. And then we want to give our illustrious executive director space.
Just want to thank all of the participants for being here. I think we've identified some systemic issues that are far beyond the control of one landlord or one tenant. The lack of affordable housing is at a crisis point, and it has been for at least 5 years that I know about. And so it seems to me that as we're trying to stem the evictions that are happening in this moment, a long-term solution about housing has to happen. And one thing I was asking one of my colleagues, I remember a discussion a few years ago about getting, as a negotiating point for getting people to bring their developments into the city, big businesses, that some of that negotiation would include them providing so much money for affordable housing. And so I think that's something that we should look at and talk about, because people, we give our store away when we let people come in, to rich people, without asking them to make any kind of investment in just, the rank and file communities. And I think that's something that ought to be considered. Thank you.
I too would like to thank all the participants for coming today and all the work that you do on a daily basis. The daily grind of this all is quite amazing and quite admirable and human felt. there is an element to that that has been emphasized over and over again. There are many elements that many patterns that I've recognized in the different speakers today. One of them is just simply outreach and participation, which I appreciate at all different levels, from Sarah Fiegel's NCRC to the Judge Bell's courts, that we as a city need to do better to reach out to people. And this question of technology and data for both sides of tenants and landlords needs to be really addressed, and it seems like simple. I say simple because I don't know anything about programming, but these are technical issues that can be fixed in terms of the application process and to streamline it. I don't know what the powers are. I realize that the powers to be at the state and federal levels are much greater than this, sometimes overshadows the city itself, but some of these in terms of just simply communication and streamlining the process seems to be one way of addressing it. Mr. Latimer brought up, Eddie Latimer brought up another issue, which is the lack of affordable housing, and I think that's a much more difficult issue. And finally, I really, again, appreciate all the organizations and nonprofits working with the city to do so. Thank you.
Yeah, remind me not to sit next to Commissioner Tran because he just took all my talking points. Thank you. No, I think that everything that Commissioner Tran said, I echo, and thanks to all of you for being here. I think the other piece that really stood out to me was where the barriers that undocumented communities face in this crisis. And so I'm really excited that we've, said it, voiced it, and that we will work to, include them in our solutions as we move forward. So just thanks to all of you for everything that you all do.
I think everybody has said everything that needs to be said, except that the way we resolve these issues is by coming together. I wish we had done this a year ago so we can have all the various entities that are working on these problems together and work together towards solutions. So I appreciate everybody's hard work and look forward to trying to address some of these issues going forward.
I want to give way at this point to Melanie Fowler Green and her wonderful staff that works diligently behind the scenes, not only on this issue, but issues in general. Melanie.
Thank you so much. It's a really great pleasure to work for the Metro Human Relations Commission. And thank you, Eddie, for your comments. Yeah, these folks are brave and have taken the responsibility to serve this city seriously. And so it's really my pleasure to work for them and with a small but mighty team. If you do not know, there's just 4 of us in our office. So I know I ask a heck of a lot from those 4. I do want to point out that this process, this public hearing process, is something that we are going to replicate on several other issues, including public safety next month on October 6th. And then in November, we want to broaden the conversation to affordable housing more generally, right? The commission wanted to address the acute problem of the pending evictions right away. But I think that they're interested in having a broader conversation about strategies for increasing affordable housing. And then in December, we'll do another public hearing related to equity within Metro's budget and how we can build better equity measures into where we as a city are spending our money. And I just can't say thank you enough. Personally, I'm just super humbled by being able to send out an email to true leaders in the community, and for you all to just immediately respond and to give so much of your time for this. And in exchange for that, our commitment to you is that we are going to put we're going to put together what you all have shared with us as the policy recommendations. We'll do a little bit of research to answer some of the questions that have come up that we have not been able to answer. We'll include those in a report, and we commit to you that we want to be your partners in advocating for the policy and procedural recommendations that you all have made. We want to be your partners in that. So thank you so much.
Again, I just want to say thank you to all of you again. I'm also grateful for Melanie and her entire staff and the work that they do, but I am buoyed all around by Commissioners Vinnick, Dash, Tran, and Burton, and the executive committee who jumped around this issue as soon as we began to talk about it, who made sure that we rolled this out. I'm encouraged about it. And what I see is all of you are primarily responding to systemic realities. And if we never get to addressing those systemic realities, then the pool and the need for response only continues to grow. So at some point, it is my hope that there is political will to bend toward addressing the mitigation and or eradication of poverty and its effect on folk. One of the mission statements of the Metro Commission is this idea of personal dignity. And that is centered around a job, a place to live, and this idea of public safety. So I just want to extend my gratitude to my commissioners who've given up their time for this effort, and also to you as we really, I'm hopeful, can continue to try to work toward a better Nashville for everybody. So again, thank you for coming. I need a motion to dismiss.
So moved.
Second.
Second, consider ourselves dismissed. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.